first thing we have someone that is working hard to help us in Western North Carolina, ensure that our families are safe and they
Texas. It is cold. I am a partner success manager here at Stacy Haynes. I work with the state and strategic partnerships, so I support schools across North Carolina and Pennsylvania to support our programs in implementation and sustainability. I am joined here today with my colleague Jamie, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, good day. My name is Jamie McCann and I'm the Director of Implementation Operations here at Sandy Hook Promise. So great to be here. I've enjoyed the programming and I look forward to our session together. I come from Miami, Florida, so this cold weather is very fun for me. Okay, so we're going to look at this next slide here. One of the things that we're going to do at our tables today is we are going to have moments and opportunities for talking and collaborating together. And in order to bring us back together, we're going to use a SAVE plaque. This plaque is used across the country in our SAVE Promise clubs to increase energy and bring groups back together. But before we can use it, we have to learn it. So I'm going to put my mic down and we're going to do it together. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Whoop, whoop, save. So that's my favorite part. So whoop, whoop, save, and I'll bring you back together that way. Can you hear me all right? Okay, great. So now that we've introduced ourselves, some of you may have already introduced yourselves at your table, but go ahead and take a moment, introduce yourself, share your organization, and one thing that has brought you joy today. Go ahead and do that, and I'll bring you back with a SAVE clap.
Thank you, Jamie. So, this summit brings together so many leaders around this room. All of you are so deeply committed to use resiliency, trauma-informed practices, and strengthening systems that support young people. That is not easy work. It requires patience, it requires consistency, it requires collaboration. Today's session is called Programs with Purpose, and I chose that title intentionally because prevention cannot be accidental, it cannot be reactive, it can't be performative. It has to be designed with purpose. Every offering we provide here at Sandy Hook Promise is structured to strengthen protective factors to increase belonging, to build agency. When young people feel connected, they're more likely to speak up, and when adults are prepared, they're more likely to respond effectively, and when communities collaborate, prevention becomes sustainable. So over the course of our discussion today, we're going to kind of look at our youth-facing programs, and how they strengthen belonging and agency. We're going to look at how our adult-focused trainings build response readiness, and just how partnerships across organizations strengthens the entire youth ecosystem. So my hope today is not just to share some information with you, but my hope is that you leave here wondering or thinking, how could this possibly help strengthen the work that I've already done? So a little bit about us. Sandy Hook Promise is a nonpartisan nonprofit founded by family members who lost loved ones in the tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut. On December 14, 2012, 20 first graders and 6 educators were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And over that next month, families came together because they wanted to do something. And several of those families launched Sandy Hook Promise in January 2013. From the beginning, our focus has been upstream prevention, recognizing warning signs, strengthening connection, building belonging, feeling seen, and equipping adults to respond with clarity and care. Over time, that vision has grown into a national movement grounded in evidence-informed programming, partnerships, and large-scale initiatives across communities, but at its core, our mission remains the same. We're also going to learn that I have trouble talking into a mic, so I apologize. Our mission is to educate and empower youth and adults to prevent violence in schools, homes, and communities. But more than that, our work is about resilience. It's about recognizing warning signs early. It's about strengthening connection before crisis. And it's about building cultures of belonging wherever young people gather. Over 44 million youth and adults have participated in our Know the Signs programs, and we support over 5,000 St. Thomas clubs nationwide. Since 2018, over 380,000 tips have come into our National Crisis Center. Those tips have led to real life-saving interventions, including over 7,000 mental health crisis interventions and at least 1,000 youth saved from suicide. Those numbers are based only on cases that were confirmed back to our National Crisis Center, so situations where a young person had attempted suicide, was actively in crisis, had the means to harm themselves, and they ultimately received hospitalization. But the impact doesn't stop there. I went too fast. Those tips have also prevented at least 19 credible planned school shooting attacks. Cases where a weapon was recovered and arrest was made. And that's nearly out of 400,000 tips, which means the real impact is likely even greater. I want to sit for a second with what those numbers actually represent. So those 380,000 plus tips are youth and adults that spoke up and said something. Those 7,000 crisis interventions are a moment where escalation was interrupted. Those lives saved from suicide, those are youth that got intervention, and those 19 prevented attacks are communities that have no idea how close to tragedy they may have been. These outcomes did not happen by accident. They happened because a person recognized a warning sign, they felt safe enough to act, and there were adults or systems or both prepared to respond effectively. Okay. How many of you work in environments where youth are carrying heavy experiences? Just show of hands. Pretty much all of you. So when I see hands go up like that, it's just a reminder that young people are navigating a lot. So the work cannot just be reactive. We have to intentionally build cultures of belonging and responsibility in the spaces that they spend their time. So I'd like to go ahead and start with our youth-focused programs. These programs are designed for schools, but they are not limited to the classrooms. They can be implemented in after-school programs, faith-based youth groups, community centers, anywhere youth are present, that connection can be strengthened. Start with Hello is one of our foundational programs, and it teaches young people how to recognize social isolation, to practice empathy, and take those small actions that create inclusion. And when we think about ACEs, social isolation is both a symptom and a risk amplifier. Young youth who experience trauma, they may withdraw socially, they struggle with trust, they are disconnected from their peers. And Start with Hello helps build protective factors by strengthening that peer connection, normalizing kindness, promoting safety. Connection is it's not just nice, it's that neurological protection, and that matters deeply. Across North Carolina, youth report high levels of witness bullying, persistent sadness, and suicidal ideation, and these numbers tell us that young people are signaling distress. So think to yourselves, where are you seeing isolation show up in your setting right now? And at your tables, share or discuss, what impact is that isolation having on the youth that you work with, and what are the barriers that make it harder for them to feel connected?
Go ahead and start that conversation now. I'll bring us back together. And if your table would like to share at the end, please just raise your hand. Thank you. Does anyone have a thought that they would like to share? I've heard social media. I heard people talking about students being alone when they were with other students. So if anyone would like to share a little bit about the conversation at their table, we'd love to have a volunteer. Oh, a classic voluntold over here.
Hi, my name is Angela. I was voluntold to share what I shared. I just echoed the social media. I think a lot of our young people think that they are well connected because they have a social media presence, that they're communicating with folks online, that they're meeting all these. In a world where we can connect with anybody, we feel our kids are still very isolated because they're not building those genuine connections in person and having those real conversations. A lot of things are just shaded with the mask that we put on social media.
Wow, thank you. You gave us a lot there. Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Mike and I work with Heights. We cover the western 7 counties, helping at-risk youth. Just living in western North Carolina in general is an isolating experience for a lot of these kids with the lack of resources we have out here, so that can be quite a barrier.
Thank you. So lack of resources can also be a huge barrier that kids are facing. Thank you all for collaborating, talking, and reflecting. I'm going to turn this back over to Brittany now.
Thank you, Jamie. So we know that when we feel isolated, unsupported, and unseen, the risk for those mental health challenges increase. But connection is protective. Belonging reduces risk. Adults reduce risk from these trusted relationships. Youth agency reduces risk. So our programs are designed to strengthen those protective factors. Start with hello at that early elementary level. We're focusing on that foundational social awareness. Young children are learning how to recognize emotions, understand fairness, and understand when someone may feel left out. We teach really simple but powerful behaviors like making eye contact, inviting someone to join in, starting with hello. These early habits build emotional safety, and when young children feel seen and included, we're already strengthening protective factors that buffer against those, against future isolation, against future distress. And as we move into middle school, those social dynamics start to become more complex. Belonging becomes more fragile, peer influence becomes stronger, exclusion becomes more visible. At this level, Start with Hello is helping youth recognize patterns of isolation, practice perspective taking, and actively disrupting exclusion. So instead of relying solely on adults to create that belonging, we are empowering youth to build it. Then as we move into high school, belonging is deeply tied to identity. Teens are navigating social pressure, online dynamics, group identity, social risk. So at this stage, Start with Hello is shifting from kindness lessons to culture building. Youth are leading connection initiatives, they're challenging exclusion norms, they're creating those peer spaces where identity is respected. Belonging is a strong protective factor against depression, self-harm, violence. When we build belonging intentionally, we're working on doing that prevention. So Start with Hello helps reduce isolation, which is that strong amplifier of trauma, but when we reduce isolation, we're not just creating warmth, we are also creating visibility. And visibility means youth are starting to notice when something feels off, whether it's a friend withdrawing, a concerning social media post, a hopeless comment. That connection increases awareness, and Say Something then provides the structure for what to do with that awareness. Say Something is our other foundational program. It empowers youth to recognize warning signs of self-harm, suicide risk, violence. But at its core, the program builds youth agency, and youth agency is critical in this work. When young people know what warning signs look like, when they believe their voice matters, when they trust that adults are going to respond, they move from helplessness to empowerment, and that shift can interrupt crisis cycles. The 3 steps to say something remain simple. Know the signs, act immediately, and say say something to a trusted adult. Across North Carolina, 98% of school districts have implemented the anonymous reporting system. So a lot of the youth here are already aware of our crisis center. So in the absence of a trusted adult, they know that they can use that program as well. Say Something is not a one-time training. It is developmentally layered that grows with young people. At the early elementary level, we focus on those foundational skills, identifying trusted adults, understanding emotions, and recognizing when something just doesn't feel right. Students they learn simple but powerful ideas like trusted adults are here to help, and that it's always okay to speak up if they're worried about themselves or a friend. At this stage, the goal isn't crisis response with the littles. It's more about building that foundation of care, empathy, and those help-seeking behaviors that students are going to carry with them as they grow. As youth move into upper elementary and middle school, we're deepening that awareness. They are learning the warning signs and what they can look like, not just bullying, but emotional distress, social withdrawal, concerning behavior online. Students are starting to understand that they may notice things happening with their peers and that those moments matter. We help them recognize that speaking up isn't about getting someone in trouble, but trying to get somebody help. And that's where awareness begins to turn into that, to a sense of shared responsibility for the safety and well-being of their community. Because the reality is that our youth usually are going to notice those warning signs before adults do. As we get into high school, that focus is expanding to risk recognition, prevention, online escalation, peer crisis response. Students are learning to recognize more serious warning signs of threats of violence, severe emotional distress, concerning online behavior that might escalate quickly. The core framework stays the same: know the signs, act immediately, and say something, but the depth and context evolve as youth mature. Students begin to understand that speaking up can help prevent harm and connect someone to the support they need. This layered approach, it allows the program to grow with students. It supports that long-term prevention instead of just that one-time intervention. So before I move over to St. Thomas Clubs, I do want to briefly share how organizations can bring these programs to life. We'll start with Hello and Say Something are supported by implementation workshops designed for adults who work with youth. Here in North Carolina, we are able to bring all of our programs to organizations and schools at no cost. These trainings, these implementation workshops, they walk through how to deliver the programs in age-appropriate ways, how to build engagement with young people, and how to move from that one-time activity to something that becomes part of the culture of your school or your organization. So we work with schools, we work with youth organizations and community partners that want to create environments where young people feel connected and empowered to look out for another. Another resource that we have and highly recommend is our Digital Learning Center. This is free for anyone who works with youth. You can register. Inside the Learning Center, there are implementation guides, lesson plans, training modules, activity toolkits, discussion resources for both of our foundational programs. Many organizations start by just simply exploring the Learning Center and utilizing these resources and sharing them with their youth.
It's free. It's pretty exciting.
I will say, if you go to register and have trouble finding your organization, I'm going to have I think there's an email there too. When you go to register if you're having trouble, but I'm going to have my email at the end. You can snap a photo and let me know as well. So our Save Promise Clubs, who in here is familiar with Save? Handful of people. So SAVE are our youth-led leadership groups focused on prevention, belonging, and culture change. So they provide those structured opportunities for youth to lead connection initiatives, address bullying and exclusion, promote mental wellness, and strengthen those peer support networks. SAVE clubs are prevention through empowerment. So the origins of Save Promise Clubs actually are rooted in a really powerful story. Save was founded right here in North Carolina 37 years ago. In 1989, Alex Orange lost his life trying to stop violence at a party. If I remember right, the party that him and his classmates were attending was a Stop the Violence party. A group of kids from a rival school showed up looking for trouble, and Alex intervened and said, "This is not the place for that." Tragically, he was shot and killed that night, but his courage did spark a movement. His classmates came together and they formed Students Against Violence Everywhere. And SAVE lives on today through our Save Promise Club. So we share Alex's story as a reminder of the power and bravery that young people carry and why it's so important to give them the tools to lead peacefully. Our Save Promise Clubs, what makes them so powerful is that the ideas and the initiatives come from the youth themselves. In many schools and communities, clubs are organizing activities that build connection and awareness, participating in our call to action weeks. Start with hello, we have in the fall. Say something week is actually next week. Peer-led discussions, discussions about mental wellness, or they create their own campaigns that encourage students to look out for one another. Some clubs focus on strengthening those peer support networks, while others partner with school leaders or community organizations to address challenges that they see around them. When youth are given the space and support to lead, they don't just participate in prevention, but they're helping shape the culture of their community. And just really briefly, I did want to share our National Youth Leadership Summit. This is an annual event where youth from across the country come together to build leadership skills and share how they're creating change in their schools and in their communities. This year it is virtual, and that gives a lot more clubs the opportunity to join. I believe you don't have to have a registered SAVE club if you have a group of youth that would benefit from this. It is free registration.
It's totally free, and you can be SAVE curious, or you can have an active SAVE club. It's totally a great opportunity for if you have youth leaders in your school that might be interested in a SAVE Promise Club to check it out and be part of this summit.
So we know youth leadership is incredibly powerful, but sustainable prevention also requires adults who are equipped to support, guide, and respond when young people speak up, and that's where all adults play a critical role. Adults help model the behaviors that we want young people to practice, creating environments where young people feel safe, supported, and comfortable speaking up when something isn't right. They're also often the ones responding when a youth reaches out for help. So because of that, we do offer a suite of adult-focused trainings designed to equip the adults who work with youth with the knowledge and tools to respond effectively and compassionately. These programs include our Trusted Adult Workshop, Prevent Suicide, and Building Resilience. So I would like all of you to just take a moment and think, was there an adult when you were in grade school, teenager, was there an adult you trusted enough to go to if you were struggling? And then at your tables, what made that adult feel safe and approachable to you? What qualities of that adult do young people need from us today?
Go ahead and take a few moments with your table mates and have a chat. And when you're ready, we'll call you back together, and if anyone wants to share, you can share that. And trustworthy. Oh, we have a voluntold person over here.
I was a school resource officer. That really helped me when I was going through a tough time, dealing with family stuff, dealing with things that was going on in my community. And and he really just loved on me, poured into me, and changed the trajectory of my life. So, still remember his name is Officer Haynes. He was with the Rock Hill Police Department in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Thank you for sharing that. If you could tell us, what was that first how did that relationship get started?
He came and got me out of ISS.
See that?
Yeah, but he just talked to me different. He talked to me like I was somebody, and made me believe that I could be somebody, and that I didn't have to act out in order to get attention. So that was the first interaction I had with Officer.
Wow. And you were already in a place of trouble, and instead of judgment, right, you received some care, and what a difference that made. Does anyone else have an experience that they would like to share with us today about maybe equality, or did someone not have a trusted adult? Maybe you want to share the experience of not having that trusted adult and what that was like. I see. Oh, wow.
Actually, I had this conversation with a friend of mine. We went to school together, graduated together, track studies, whatever. And we did not have one, and we had men in our school that probably should have had that conversation with us. And I'm just saying, black men who had gone to college, played sports and everything, and here we were, you know, got these scholarships and about to go into, you know, unknown territory because we're the first ones in our families going off to school and everything. So, but they taught me a lot though, because they didn't have that conversation with me. I most definitely had that conversation with my son as I got, you know, as the opportunity arose. So.
Thank you for that. And how important it is for us, sometimes we have non-examples. Sometimes we don't have the support we need, but then we turn and we try to give it to our younger people in our lives like you did, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing and talking today. I'm going to pass it back to Brittany.
So we know trusted adults are one of the strongest protective factors in a young person's life. Research on adverse childhood experiences consistently shows that even one stable, responsive adult can dramatically alter outcomes. So here's the question: are the adults in our organizations equipped to respond when a young person opens up? These trusted adult workshops is designed for youth serving adults across systems, whether they're educators, counselors, mentors, faith leaders, after-school staff, law enforcement, anyone that works with youth. We focus on 4 key actions: to listen without interruption, respond with empathy, reassure so youth feel validated, and to follow up so they know they were taken seriously. Youth don't just need adults who care, they need adults who are prepared. So think about your organization. If a young person disclosed suicidal thoughts, fear of violence, abuse at home, concern about a peer, would every adult on your team know what to do next? How confident are you that your organization has clear response pathways? That is the gap that this workshop helps close. These workshops can be held virtually, they can be held in person. They're designed to be practical, interactive, and immediately usable. Another one of our adult-focused trainings is Prevent Suicide. Suicide prevention cannot live in one building or one profession. It has to live across an entire youth network wherever youth are supported. Prevent Suicide for educators is a research-informed training designed for youth-serving communities. We have a version for caregivers and parents, mentors, law enforcement, faith leaders, counselors. The focus is simple but powerful. Recognize warning signs, take them seriously, and say something to connect youth to help. If you haven't noticed, Sandy Hook Promise really loves 3 steps to our programs. Many young people show warning signs before a crisis, and sometimes those signs are missed, they're minimized, sometimes they're misunderstood. This training helps build that shared awareness and shared language so adults across systems can identify risk and respond more confidently. One of the most important skills adults develop in this training is recognizing those warning signs. Sometimes those signs are direct, a young person talking about hopelessness. Other times they're very subtle, like withdrawing from friends, sudden behavioral changes. The goal isn't to make adults mental health professionals. It's just to help recognize when something may not be right and know how to respond. This training also focuses on how adults respond in those moments. Many people worry about saying the wrong thing, so we practice how to support those, how to start those supportive conversations, to listen without judgment, to help reduce that stigma around mental health. Most importantly, participants learn how to connect young people to the right support systems. The final part of this training looks beyond individual conversations and does focus on systems. So participants examine how young people currently access help and how adults in their environment work together to respond when someone is struggling. By strengthening those response pathways, organizations can ensure that when a young person does reach out, they're met with support, with care, and a clear path to help. The last program I'm going to go over is our Building Resilience. This is a professional development session for educators and youth-serving adults that focuses on trauma-informed practices. It helps participants understand different types of trauma, to learn how trauma impacts the brain and behavior, and apply strategies to support youth while also protecting their own mental wellness. Stephanie Chinque is who hosts these professional development sessions. She is a nationally recognized leader in trauma-informed care. She's also the founder of the Resilience Center of Newtown, which was established in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. By the end of her sessions, participants recognize the strong link between self-care and student success. They're able to identify trauma and its impact. And they gain tools to create more trauma-sensitive classrooms and communities. So I'll close out with this. Prevention is not a standalone program. It is not a one-day training. It's not one organization carrying the load. Prevention is a coordinated effort. It requires shared language across youth-serving systems. It requires aligned response protocols. It requires adults who are prepared and youth who feel empowered. It requires organizations willing to collaborate. Every organization in this room touches a different part of a young person's ecosystem. No single entity is going to see the whole picture, but together we can start connecting those pieces. When youth hear consistent messages about belonging, when adults respond with a shared understanding, when warning signs are recognized early, when systems communicate, that is when prevention moves from reactive to proactive, and that's where partnership becomes essential. If anything that we've shared today resonates with any of the work you're already doing, we would love to explore working with you. All of our trainings and programs, they're designed to be adaptable across youth-serving environments, so not just schools. Again, in North Carolina, we are able to bring all of these at no cost to your organizations. So if you're looking to strengthen adult response systems, align trauma-informed practices across your team, or just empower the youth that you serve with those structured prevention tools, we can work with you to bring these trainings and implementation workshops directly to your setting. Some organizations do begin with the adult-focused trainings to build that shared language. We have a lot of others that just start with implementing those youth-focused programs with support from our team. And many may go.
Thank you.
Contact info. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for going over this presentation with everyone, and thank you all so much for your attention, Brittany, I know, will be racing out of here. She has a flight to catch, but I will be here, and if you want to ask me any questions directly, please feel free to come on and talk. We would love to bring Save Clubs and our programming to any of your organizations, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Really quickly, just as a disclaimer, that QR code on the screen is not a newsletter sign up and it is not a marketing form. That is a personal form that I set up just for this event. So if you had a question, if you just want more resources, if you need that Learning Center link or you want more information about our Safe Clubs, that QR code will just let you drop your name and email so you can go straight to my inbox. So when I am back home in my office, I can follow up with all of you. But I did want to let you know that if you use it, you're not signing up for a mailing list. Thank you.
Wonderful family. I don't know if it's a blessing or not to be the last one, but again, I got tagged in, so here we are. Here's what I'd love for us to do today, though. We are going to go on a journey, and that journey is going to take us from awareness to understanding. And so for us to do that, I'm going to ask that everybody pull out a piece of paper. It could be a notepad, it could be a piece of paper. And the question you're going to write at the top of your piece of paper, and this is going to keep you from walking off the stage. You're going to write at the top of your piece of paper, what is the question that I may have about autism? And I want you to write an actual question about autism. And then I'm going to ask you to number 1, 2, 3, after that question. And I'm going to ask this as a family. We're going to have like a living room conversation today. And I'm going to ask you to make sure that from this talk, you take away at least 3 things that you can help support a family with an autistic youth. So what wasn't in my introduction, let me start with this. I'm a mom of an Eagle Scout, so yay to Scouting, yes, yes. I am been in this space for 25 years. For the last 10 years as a mental health counselor, I've been working with neurodivergent youth. I am old enough in the field to know when bipolar was popular, then it changed to ADHD being popular, and now autism is popular. And I say popular because that is what we're seeing coming into our offices. And so for 10 years though, more importantly, I also am an auntie to an autistic nephew. And so I have sat in meetings with my twin sister when she's had to fight with the schools to get services. I've sat with her when they didn't understand when he was 3 years old and kicked out of daycare centers, what's happening. And so not only do I wear that professional hat, but I also wear that personal family hat. And so family, I'm going to talk to you today from stories of folks that I work with, but also experiences that I've lived through. Is that okay? All right, you can talk to me. I'm a children's pastor too. That's okay. All right. So let me tell you really quickly as well. So as an author, one of my first books, Powerful Peaceful Parenting, has won 2 awards. And I share that because I'm very passionate about powerful parenting. The ability to equip people with the skills, with the assignment of parenting that we've been given, right? And so when I wrote this second book, though, for Love Our Babies Well, I went in a little bit of a different direction. And it's still faith-based, because I do believe, although the kids have 6, 7, I always tease they can have 6, 7. We got Deuteronomy 6, 7 for those of you in the church. Teaching us the discipline is when we rise, when we go in the streets, all the things, right? So I wanted to start with faith, right? So that's our love. Our babies. And so a lot of times in this space, being a woman of color, being a therapist of color, I will families say, well, those parenting books aren't for our children. Or, we need old school tactics. And I often will say to families, the evidence out there, if you look for it, there's research on our children. And so I was really intentional that the research in Love Our Book as well is evidence-based, but it's also evidence-based on Black and brown communities. And I wanted that to be, again, a trauma-informed lens and a wellness perspective. And so the word well is about the idea of wellness. And I love Dr. Lexi, who was getting us dancing, getting us moving, even her presentation was great. But do you think about your child's physical wellness? Do you think about their environmental wellness and the things that we have in their spaces? Do we think about their social wellness? We just heard about social isolation, right? And what it's doing to our children. And so I incorporated in this book evidence-based practices, and then the final chapter was dear to my heart, was a chapter specifically on neurodivergent parenting. Because if you've been around neurodivergent children and parents, their journey looks very different. And it is difficult and rewarding and a blessing all at the same time. So bear with me, family, today. You're going to hold me accountable. So that question that you have for autistic youth and young people, you're going to make sure that I answer it for you. You're going to take away 3 tips and strategies today to help support individuals in that space. You with me? Yes. All right, let's get, I love it, we're still awake. I love it. Okay, let's go. There we go. All right, and so bear with me because I am a storyteller. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Riley and her family. When Riley came to me, Riley was in 2nd grade. And Riley's experience in 2nd grade, like many autistic youth, was pretty traumatic. Her family actually did not know she was autistic. The school was saying we think it's social anxiety. We just think she's anxious. And so up until 2nd grade, they were doing things like putting notes on her desk. They were having a counselor meet her at the door. But every single day of school, Riley's mom had to come and get her because she couldn't maintain the stay in school. And it was getting to the point that Riley was academically going to be held back, and then of course mom was unable to work. And so within a few minutes of meeting with Riley and her mom, I began to hear some things that already put my antenna up around what we might be dealing with. And so the family started talking and Riley began to share. And I use a practice called collaborative and proactive solutions. So it's a problem-solving model. So with little Riley, she's sitting in my office, and I began to ask her things like, well, tell me, Riley, what's difficult about walking into the school? What's difficult about riding the bus? See, for some of us, we never stop to even ask them what the difficulty is. And so we throw band-aids of solutions at kids without ever asking them about the difficulty itself. And so problem solving is a therapeutic approach. It's actually, Dr. Ross Reed wrote a wonderful book called The Explosive Child. And if you have an explosive child, I highly recommend the book. But he uses the whole process called problem solving. And I trained under Dr. Green, and I use that model. And so Riley began to tell us things. And so we first started with problem solving the bus stop. And here's what's interesting. So as she was talking about the bus stop, I began to, again, think she might be autistic. And she began to tell me things like, well, I worry about what the kids are going to say. I worry that I'm different. When I get on the bus, it's really, really loud. I don't like sitting next to people. I get to school and the teacher, sometimes she looks at me and I think she's upset with me or did something wrong. And so the more she began to talk to me about what was happening, I was hearing some of the markers of autism. And we missed it. And I say we because she was already in 2nd grade. And her older brother actually was already diagnosed autistic, but he was nonverbal. So even her parents missed it. Research supports that when we have, especially a male older sibling, we have higher chances of other siblings having neurodivergent conditions, right? So whether ADHD, dyslexia, learning disabilities, or also autism themselves. And so we began to problem solve things like getting to the bus stop. And she would say to me, well, Dr. Stacy, here's my challenge. I really want to get to know the kids. And I'm going to talk about some of our myths with autism, right? Because she wanted to be social. But the deficit is she was having a difficult time with the social interaction. So as I said, what do you think we could do? You want to get to know the kids, but it's really difficult for you to get to know them at the bus stop. Her and mom looked at I looked at mom, I was like, I don't know a bus stop solution. Some of you would say, oh, she should just go introduce herself, right? you haven't worked with kids in 2026. Right? They don't know. I have to teach college kids how to order pizza with like a real person, right? Not an app, not something on a website. So as we were problem solving, Riley says, listen to this, Riley says, you know what? I think if I get my basketball and I start to bring my basketball to the bus stop, maybe the other kids will want to play with me. I looked at Mom. I said, well, I don't know that the bus driver will let the basketball on the bus. Mom said, that's okay, I'm at the bus stop. I'll bring it back home before I go to work. But let's give this solution a try. What do you think happened the next day? Riley and Mom gave the solution a try. She walks to the bus stop with the basketball. She has more than enough friends at the bus stop because she's bouncing the ball and they want to play with her. So when we think about teaching skills, right? It wasn't a social skills group I threw her in. It was a solution to a problem that she was having in real time. And helping her to create solutions allowed her to then gain skills to be able to navigate the situations. One of the beautiful things about Riley, so that was second grade. Riley is now a senior in high school, the last time I saw her, and she is playing AAU basketball. So, not only was it a moment of second grade helping us to get to school, but it was also an opportunity to find a really great sport that she loves and she's involved in. So what I want to talk about as well, I'm going to figure out my clicker here, is when we think about autism, how many of you work with autistic individuals, students, coworkers, have family members? Raise a hand. Okay, that's about right. So here in North Carolina, in this state, 1 in 39 folks, right? We're talking, and I say folks because they don't say little. Oftentimes we think autism, we think littles, right? They grow up. And so 1 in 39 individuals have a diagnosis of autism. And so people will say, well, why does it seem like it's on the rise? We're getting better with assessments. We're getting better with screening. We definitely have a better understanding of what autism is, and I'm going to go through that in a little bit. And here's what's interesting. As much as we have all of this awareness, and this is why I'm going to challenge you to have understanding, we still are struggling with understanding. If I were to say to you, what does an autistic person look like right now? Many of you would struggle with that. That's why I said write down a question that you have, because we do still have questions. And even I still have questions. I'm always asking individuals about their experiences because I want to learn as much as I can. So what's the average wait time though? We have assessments, we have tools. For example, I'm trained on the ADOS screening, and so I can deliver the ADOS from anywhere from littles all the way to adults. But the average wait time to get an assessment, 2 to 4 years. 2 to 4 years. And so what are parents doing in 2 to 4 years while they're waiting? They're running back and forth to their pediatricians, right? They're trying to get help and support. They're coming to community groups. If they've been able to learn about services like early intervention and being able to get childhood services early enough, they can access, but then we stop at 3, right, for a lot of our services. And so we have to pick that back up at 5 within our schools. And I'll talk about ways that I help families to get around that in a sec. But even the idea of our specialists are limited. So in most states, and now I'm originally from New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I moved here, transplanted about 6 months ago. And so I'm so used to the systems and how they work. But when we think about specialists that work with autistic individuals and can diagnose, we are still limited to neurologists, developmental pediatricians, psychologists, psychiatrists. So I would have folks come into my office and being a licensed clinical professional counselor, independently licensed, not requiring supervision. Technically, according to New Jersey law, I still could not diagnose autism. I can treat it, I can work with you, but I could not diagnose it. So I would have families come in, I will do a screening, I'll do an ADOS, which I'm able and licensed to do, I can do those things, and then I have to put them on a 2 to 4 year wait list. Yes, to get services. So here's what I learned. Here's the fun part. So I help families to navigate systems, right? That's the big part of what we're doing here today. Because trauma-informed care says, I don't see something and walk away, right? I don't say to a family, oh, go sit on the wait list for 4 years, right? I hope that you get services and get the diagnosis. So there's a thing called a speech therapist. And speech therapists and occupational therapists can also diagnose. And speech therapists are great with getting families an IEP that says they have difficulty with social communication disorders, which then will get them an IEP, which will then get them access in schools to be able to have services, right? So we learn the back door. Because again, that's what we do when we're trauma informed. We learn how to get families resources. And so we have specialists, we have folks in the space, but we also have a lot of misdiagnosing going on. And I want to talk a little bit about two main areas of misdiagnosis. Many of our young people, well, let me say as I think about that, many young people, for example, are getting the diagnosis of ADHD first. Why? It's because we know about it. We have movies about it. We have books about it. Anytime someone says, oh, a kid's not focusing in class, what's the first thing you think? ADHD. Well, why don't we think depression? Why don't we think anxiety? Why don't we think post-traumatic stress disorder? These are also things that make it difficult for someone to focus and to pay attention. Anxiety, right? We have students that are hypervigilant, even because of trauma and things that they're dealing with, that makes it really hard for them to focus in a classroom setting. They're not ADHD folks. If we treat the trauma, we treat the stress, we've got kids now whose brains are able to learn. And so misdiagnosis is happening there. Misdiagnosis is happening in children of color. We are seeing, statistics say, we are seeing an increase in diagnosis of Black and brown children. And I say, well, no, what happened was we stopped calling them bad. We stopped calling them disrespectful. We stopped and said, wait a minute, let me stop suspending, dismissing and expelling them from kindergarten. Because again, when we look at the populations, 1 in 4 Black and brown child that's getting expelled from kindergarten actually has some underlying mental health concerns that we need to address, or trauma. And so looking at the statistics and saying, okay, that has been an area that we haven't been able to address. And then our last area of misdiagnosis is our females. Just like Riley, but actually I've worked with kids as late as juniors in high school, young women, young adults in college, even career women who were never diagnosed. Because why? Oh, it's just girl drama when they have peer issues and social interaction concerns. Or that's just, they're just quirky girls, it's okay. And we miss it even in our female population. And so talking about autism. So speaking of diagnosing, I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page as me, because some of you are still like, Stacy, I don't know what that is really. So let's talk about it. The DSM-5 did some great things, and some people feel like it did some not great things. So one of the things the DSM-5 gave us a spectrum disorder. And so we no longer have what we used to call Asperger's, and you folks would say, oh, that's high functioning. People hate that. All right, that one's working. Perfect. I'll put this one down here. Keep it moving. All right, so when we look at the idea of this spectrum disorder, we got rid of high functioning, and we're saying everyone, again, when we're talking about autism, it is one spectrum. And we have levels then. We have level 3, level 2, level 1, and those levels tell us a little bit about the type of support that they need. So our level 3, and I hate to say is kind of our traditional, what people think of as an autistic child or adult, but this is someone who has more severe needs, right? And so they need higher levels of support. 2 specific things make us autistic. Social deficits, repetitive behaviors. Not about intelligence, not about your empathy levels, because a lot of people say, oh, they're not empathetic. No, I know some real empathetic autistic folks, and that's actually part of the challenge. They love really hard, and they have big feelings, big emotions, and it's really hard. But when we think about social deficits, what we did with the DSM-4 is we pulled out social communication disorder. And so people who may meet the criteria where they have difficulty with social reciprocity and social communication, which again we would have maybe considered our high-functioning kiddos, we pulled that out into a separate disorder. Social communication. How much of our interactions are social? And when I say social communication, not just what we say verbally, but your facial expression, your tone of voice, your cadence. All of these things, autistic individuals are trying to understand and interpret to understand that social interaction. And so that becomes difficult when we have these deficits. We have inflexibility or rigid behaviors, extreme difficulty coping with change. I think about teachers, for example. Any elementary school teachers in here? Okay, all right, we got a couple elementary school teachers. So one of the beautiful things about elementary school teachers is y'all have a schedule. Somewhere in that classroom, there is order and structure, and everybody knows when it's going to happen. Then what happens when you get to middle school and high school? It's a bell system. And I don't know necessarily, because I'll tell you one thing about autistic kids is we have a hard time with sense of time, right? I'm going to talk about skill deficits in a minute. And so even the idea, you tell me there's a clock, I'm not looking at it, because looking at a clock actually causes me more anxiety, and I get stressed out looking at the clock, especially if it's a time test. And now these bells go off, and I don't know where I'm supposed to be, and I don't have my folders. But again, even the transitions, difficulty with change, they have to do 8 to 9 changes a day, just in middle school. But this is a part of their diagnosis, difficulty with transitions and changes. So even in the elementary level, when we say, oh, it's time to go from recess into ELA, we have the meltdowns, right? Because again, it's a change in transition. But these are key to their diagnosis. And I'm saying that because we have to stop labeling it as disruptive behavior. We have to stop punishing our kids by taking away recess because they can't come in from recess, and recognize that, oh, it's a transition in their day. How do we problem solve to support our young people in these types of transitions? And so that's level 3. Level 3, folks, oftentimes, again, we do talk about that verbal versus nonverbal. Can you imagine what it's like to not be able to communicate? On April, I think it's April 7th, I have a guest coming on my podcast, and that's the Dr. Stacy show, it's a podcast. And it's interesting because she went through a medical condition that caused her not to be able to speak, and quite like a few weeks later, her child was diagnosed with autism. And she said it gave her such a different perspective, and being able to have awareness of everything, but not being able to communicate, right? And so level 2, when I think about this, and so for those of you in general education, this is where we're starting to see more of our kiddos pop up with level 2 diagnoses. Again, we have those social deficits. And one of the things in talking about social communication, tennis. Imagine tennis for a second. When you have tennis, the ball has to go back and forth across the net in order for us to play, right? Now, I am not a tennis person. I can't even get on with pickleball. I don't know what's going on with pickleball, but I cannot get into all of this. But anyway, analogy, we're going back and forth, right? When you think of an autistic kid at level 2, when you think about social communication, these are the kids that sometimes have a hard time with jokes. They have a hard time with sarcasm and understanding. Vague instructions and directions. They don't understand language oftentimes, right? And so oftentimes the communication goes one way and falls. And even for the kids, they try to go back the other way, and guess what? It lands and falls on the other kids, right? So this is a kid that's trying to tell jokes that aren't so funny. I have a lot of those kiddos that get put in offices of principals because their jokes did not land well. But they were trying to be funny. They were trying to connect in a social way. And so one of the interesting things about language, though, is we start to see it pop up and it starts to hit their academics. Math is great until math does what? Has letters. My educators knew. Right? And to an autistic brain that's rigid, inflexible, math from first grade kindergarten always just had numbers. And now what did you do from an academic perspective called algebra and equations, and then we start to spiral. Now some of our autistic folks are brilliant at math. My daughter, for example, had 110 all the way through, bless her heart, she can do math in her sleep, right? However, when we start to, again, make a change for people who have difficulty with changes and transitions, they have inflexibility, it has to be one way, it's about perception. Now we start to see where it starts to impact the academics. And so, word problems, reading. Reading all of a sudden becomes not just reading vocabulary. Many of our autistic youth who are level 1 or level 2 are really, really bright and smart, 50% of autistic individuals have an average or above IQ. And so again, even when we think about intelligence, again, autism is not related to anyone's level of intelligence. But kids will say things like, there's too many words on the page. Visual stimulation and overstimulation, even with what's happening. Oftentimes people will think of sensory concerns with autism, and you're thinking, oh, touch or smell or sounds. All of us know loud sounds. But sensory overload is even about the number of math problems that are on that worksheet. And so in schools, we're having to look at how do we help our young people who are struggling with this. So the rest of the day, I'm actually going to talk more about our level 1. And the reason I'm going to talk about level 1, because these are the kiddos that people say, well, they don't look autistic, and we all cringe. These are the students that are being labeled disrespectful. These are the students that are doing things like running out of the classroom eloping, and we're calling them oppositional defiant. And we're giving them, again, misdiagnosis. One of the things about repetitive behavior and special interest, for those of us that are old enough to remember, we used to diagnose children with autism by how they lined up what? Cars, trains, toys. Well, here's what's interesting. How many kids are playing with cars, trains? What are they playing with? iPads. So what some people are calling video game addiction, I'd be real curious if it's special interest because our toys have changed. And we see the same level of anxiety, frustration, and meltdown when we pull that technology away than when we pulled away the trains, when we pulled away the toys, when we pulled away their dinosaurs. Back in the day, it's funny, I could always tell if my kids liked monster trucks when they came in or dinosaurs. I was already like, we're on the spectrum, here it comes, here it comes. All right, again, mental health, they're coming in for behavioral things, so again, there's other things I'm looking at, but those were those markers. And now all of our kids are on devices. And so it's really hard because no, I can't sit and watch them line up. Now as a therapist in the space, what I do, I tell people I'm not a play therapist, but I have lots of toys, and I do watch them and what they interact with in the office, what they play with, and then also watching for repetitive behaviors, not just lining up, but things have to be a certain way. Kids will come in, it's interesting to watch them play with the same toys in the same way every single time, even if it's the 30th time they've come to see me, they have to do things in a certain way. So again, that repetitive behavior we see. Any fans of The Big Bang Theory, the show? All right, so I'm thinking of Sheldon. What did Sheldon have a hard time with when it came to his sofa? Not being able to sit in his spot. And you could visibly see his physical frustration when someone else was sitting in his spot that he perceived to be his spot. Now his name was not on the sofa. There was not a name tag that indicated. But even the level of frustration and agitation that comes with change is something that we have to be aware of. So this third grader that's been used to their spot in class, and the teacher thinks it's great to socialize our kids, and let's move seats. What happens? Chaos, meltdown, agitation, frustration, and now oftentimes challenging the teacher because I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, and you put me in a situation that outstrips my ability to be rational, and now you're calling me disrespectful. Well, really all you did was change my seat, and all I want to do is come change in the same seat. Because it regulates me. And it gives me a sense of safety and calm, even in the classroom. And again, these are small things. I'm not faulting the teacher and the educator, but these are the little things that we have to come to an understanding and an appreciation of something as simple as changing seats, which seems so minor. I'll tell you earlier, so I have a concussion. I'm healing. And when we were clapping earlier, I literally was like, okay, I have to leave. Like, the noise and the sound, even the lights at some point, I've been closing my eyes throughout the day. But again, sensory awareness, even having a concussion has made me so much more aware of what other people deal with when sensory input is often overwhelming. All right, sure, yep, okay, perfect. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Stephen. And if you don't have 1, 2, and 3 yet, you're getting there for some notes. So Stephen was a 5-year-old diagnosed with ADHD. Again, misdiagnosis comes into my office that he's on meds at 5. Great, because we're treating ADHD. And what do? We put him on meds. His mom was so upset and so distraught. They couldn't keep him in class. The church Sunday school was kicking him out. They were having so many challenges with him, getting him to go to bed, getting him to work with the teachers. And so I began to talk with Stephen. And again, using problem solving, asking Stephen things like, well, tell me a little bit about what happens when you're in school. And Stephen would say things like, well, my brain just gets overwhelmed, or I get tired, or my hand hurts when I'm writing. And so these are things, again, as I began to listen to him, I said, we're not dealing with ADHD. And so we sent Stephen out for his 2-year wait list, but sure enough, he came back on autistic and getting school supports. And what do school supports look like? Because I want to help my educators, and I want to help my folks to recognize what we need to do for school. Teachers right now, as we look at statistics, about 6 in 20 kids in a classroom have some level of a neurodivergent learning disability. When I was in school, it might have been 1 in 20. Right? So you're talking about 1/3 of your classroom that a general education, not the special education classrooms, but a general education teacher is now having to navigate possibly 6 to 8 plans, behavior plans in a classroom. One of the things that we talk about with our autistic children, because they are bright, smart, and amazing, many of them will not qualify for special education. Their behavior may get them an IEP or 504, but from a testing school assessment perspective, no, they do not qualify for special education or IEP. And some families do not understand that because all they know on the internet is people tell them, go get a plan. Your kid's autistic, go get a plan. But we have to understand which plan best supports our kids and why we need to have that plan. So one of the things I educate and train parents on the difference between an IEP and a 504, and most of my autistic level 1 students who can be in high honors math, can be in ELA, can go to recess and gym, may possibly just need a 504 plan. Still legally binding to the schools, still recognizes that there's a disability, however, allows that student to operate and be in general education classes. An IEP also will allow your student to be in a general education classroom. We are now doing a beautiful thing in lots of schools where we have 2-teacher classrooms. We have students with IEPs and students in general education all in that same classroom being supported by 2 teachers and learning in those environments. So having a diagnosis, and I have to answer this for those families, does not mean your child is pulled from general education and being able to thrive in the school setting. So teachers, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that teachers are attending seminars and workshops like this, learning about trauma-informed care, learning about adverse childhood experiences, because we are causing trauma, even when we change that kiddo's seat. Even when we make, I've had kiddos who have been physically pulled out of schools, physically removed from schools, things that become traumatic because the school was not able to manage and help. Thinking about supportive transitions, I was listening earlier when someone was talking about that middle school transition. And again, things like bullying. My autistic kids, the number of about 80% of them are dealing with bullying by the time they're in middle school. Why? Because remember that social reciprocity they struggle with. They struggle in social environments. I have kiddos that have to have on their 504 plans that they cannot change in the locker room with other kids because the kids will push them in locker rooms, tease them, do things to them because the teachers aren't around, even in those spaces. And so being able to help educate our schools. And here's what's interesting about COVID. Prior to COVID, I used to say to educators, yeah, we are kind of limited in what we can do, right? And we are limited in our resources. And then COVID hits, shuts down schools, and magically, oh, every kid has a Chromebook. Oh, magically, education can change? What? We're at home, we're doing things differently? We can watch videos? Wait a minute, we can have no homework for a whole school year? I always tease parents, if kids did not have homework, I'd probably be without a job. Because many times that is what I'm helping families with, right? Navigating homework. Autistic children, it's interesting, if you talk to them about homework, one thing that I always hear, it is schoolwork. Why do I have to do it at home? So the fight is about perspective, right? Peter Vermeulen, I love him. He's a psychologist in Europe, and he does a lot of work with autistic individuals. But Peter Vermeulen talks about perspective. And the idea that really autistic individuals have deficits in perception and how they perceive things, right? And so sometimes you'll hear from the kids when they're younger, things aren't fair. That's a big word, it's not fair. And things have to be fair. And even moments, for example, when someone, I'll have like a parent that will redirect the child, and then later on the child goes and like marks up their counter, right, with a marker or something. And when I ask the child, tell me a little bit about that moment, they'll say, because they upset me. So it's almost like a revenge moment, because they need things to balance and they need things to be fair. And so, helping our educators. When I talk to autistic students in school, man, I got so much, I'm going, I'm moving. When I talk to autistic students in school, guess what their favorite subjects are? They're out an answer, what do you think? Recess, what else? Art? Music. Sometimes. The sensory overload depends, right? If I can touch people and dance with people and music, they're not having it. But yes, they're creatives. And so here's what I say to folks. One of the things, I love it because my neighbors over there, Via Health, had some coloring stuff and putty and some Play-Doh, and I was super excited because I'm like, yes, the expressiveness. Coloring is such a calming tool, but how many of our kids are coloring? Even just a tip for general kids, and I'll just tell you this right now, we're struggling with memory and retention in schools. It's not because we have devices, it's because we've stopped handwriting. Handwriting and coloring were your preschool, pre-education activities that helped us to build memory and retention, and it actually calmed and soothed us. What were all you guys doing at COVID besides Saturday Red? Adult coloring books, right? Yes, to help us with relaxation, calm, and wellness. All right, moving along because I got too much to talk about, and okay, we're at 15 minutes, we're doing good. All right, you guys still with me? Yes? Maybe? Awesome. All right, April. Let's talk a little about April. So April was a little bit different. April was 10 years old. April was great at school. No school issues whatsoever. Her parents would go to parent-teacher conference and swear that the teacher was talking about a different child. It was not their kid. And the things that they were dealing with at home was April was having difficulty getting up for school. She was arguing back with everybody. She was hitting her brother. She was being mean. At nighttime, she wouldn't go to bed. She actually was AWOLing from the home, leaving and going to the community park at 2 in the morning and hanging out in the playground. And during some problem-solving conversations, some things that we worked on, again, we didn't punish, we didn't put a behavior chart in, because trust me, you guys have already tried that stuff. You even tried spanking by the time you come to see a therapist, and none of that works. If it worked, I tell you, this is a whole nother lecture, but I tell you, we wouldn't have prisons full of people if spanking worked, right? We have tried discipline, and I tell folks, there's so much more that we can do. And understanding and talking is the first thing we need to do. So in talking with April, we decided to put some things in place, and one of the things we did was a pretty cool bracelet for the morning routine. And through problem solving, we learned that she knows exactly what to do. She's bright and smart. She doesn't like mornings. Again, just like Riley, mornings are tough because morning puts me in school for 6 hours, which is stressful, right? I'm masking all day. I have all this information to learn. It's hard on my brain. These are the things that the kids tell me about even school. And so on her bracelet, though, we had tasks, and she would pull off the bracelet each time she did a task in the morning. What did this do? Gave her independence. Right? I tell parents, use Alexa to your advantage. Have Alexa tell your kids what to do every step of the morning. Stop yelling. Stop screaming. Use technology to your advantage. Reminders. Set alarms. Right? We heard earlier, even the idea of having reminders help. So giving her choice. Mom was not going to be at a restaurant, but guess what? I'm not going to argue with the kid over breakfast. Lay out choices. She was able to help us decide what kind of things she would like for breakfast. Mom made sure they were there. We were able to give her some nutrients. As Dr. Lexi was talking earlier in her workshop about this idea that the body needs fuel. And so many of our kiddos, even the fact of giving them something to eat in the morning helps us to set them and help their behaviors. And so we did actually put some home supports in place. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about home supports. And this is going to go into what I do as a therapist with children and families. Medically, we are noticing that there is a pattern with autistic individuals. They tend to have more health issues than other kids. So when I'm doing an intake, I do a holistic intake. I oftentimes will ask about medical things that are happening. And some of the medical questions I will ask, are we having difficulty with constipation, bowel movements? Are we having allergies? Any tubes in the ears? Any difficulty with finer gross motor skills? And so these are some things that even our gut health, we talk about gut health. A lot of our kiddos will talk about stomach aches, headaches, things that actually bother them. And so before I can do mental health treatment, I actually have to do physical treatment. And so I might be sending them to OT and PT, which is great. I also may be changing diet. And so the big things, I know we were talking earlier about diet, Dr. Lexi, that's a big thing. But the allergens like milk and wheat, gluten, right? Removing some of those key allergens from our diet, eggs, we see a tremendous difference. And again, organic is best when we can. However, even the idea of recognizing that they do need to eat, even if they're not hungry. One of the things with sleep, I told you April was outside, 2 in the morning. My college students are up 2, 3 in the morning. My high school students are up. Autistic people have a really different circadian rhythm and difficulty with sleep. Falling asleep and getting to sleep. It's a very common question. It is so common right now that pediatricians are handing out melatonin to kiddos like it's candy, right? It's like it's Halloween and here's your candy, melatonin. What I recommend with people, there are a lot of natural supplements out there. There are a lot of people in this space when it comes to sleep and things naturally and helping people to sleep. But what we put in place for April is just a sleep routine, a hygiene routine. When they're 4 and 5, what do? We bathe them, read a book to them, we tuck them in. They get to be 9 and 10, what do? Good night. And we wonder why they won't go to sleep. What did we condition them to do? Have someone with them when it's time to go to bed. And they didn't change, we changed, right? We changed our nighttime routine on them all of a sudden. And we tell them things like, well, you're old enough now to go to bed by yourself. And then we spend the next 40 minutes trying to get them to go to bed. And so oftentimes it's creating a nighttime routine. And again, recognizing that autistic kiddos do have a hard time, so what do? We're putting toys in the bed. I'm putting lights around the room. One of the things about safety, there's a sense of safety that's in school, that's at home, that's in the community. And a lot of times kids, when they're laying in bed, they're thinking about what's going to happen to them the next day at school. And their anxiety, we call it the witching hour, increases anytime around dinner time till bedtime because the world starts to shut down. And when the world starts to shut down and you have anxiety, what starts to happen? More anxious thoughts, right? And so the anxiety increases, which is why it's difficult for them to settle at bedtime. So having a sleep hygiene, having a sleep routine is something that helps. Now picture is not the kiddo that I was working with, but this is a true story. I had a mom that was living in an apartment and she could not get her kid to settle. And so one of the things I said to her, I said, why don't we try? He loves running, he loves jumping, and he was jumping on furniture anyway. So I was like, let's get him a little trampoline. Let's put it in your bedroom, his bedroom, and let's let him jump. And sure enough, she was able to get him to settle at bedtime just by around 15, 20 minutes of jumping, getting all the energy out, and then she would sit with him, read, and settle him at night. We have to also be aware, again, these are small things that we can do, but routine and structure helps reduce anxiety, helps increase, again, connection. When we talk about kids needing regulation and connection, they need us to be consistent so they'll know what's happening. Even something called, and if you're on the internet these days, we call it body doubling. What does that mean? That means we do it with them. Whether that's homework, whether that's chores, whether that's brushing their teeth. So many families will tell me that it's so difficult to get their kids to do chores. And so I'll say, well, what do we have? Do we have the Cinderella effect going on? Cinderella went off, did the chores, we sit back and watch TV? Or are we all doing chores? 15, 20 minutes, I have 2 college-age kids, they'll tell you now on Friday afternoons, we all hit 30 minutes, let's go. Everybody do chores, we turned over the beds, turned over the sheets, got the laundry in, everybody cleaned the bathroom. Within 30 minutes, we were done, and guess what I said to them? You now have the rest of the weekend to yourself. Good luck, have fun. And I didn't argue about chores daily, because that's not my job, right? And so being able to, one of the things we recognize is this idea of body doubling and doing things with autistic youth help them. So think about that in school, when the kiddo's having a difficult time. For those that can tolerate social interaction and want a buddy, even teachers and educators, you can't get them to do the work, partner them. Get them to work with somebody. This is why one-on-ones are so successful. It's not that the one-on-ones, again, in some different ways they're helping with social interaction, but the one-on-one gives them a sense of safety, that somebody is here with me when the world gets hard and my brain can't handle it and it's overwhelming and I'm stressed. That is what that one-to-one support also provides, that connection. And so the last kiddo I'll talk about is my high schooler, Rachel. And Rachel, wonderful kiddo, she was blessed to be diagnosed early in her K through 12 schooling, so she was diagnosed when she was in kindergarten. What was kind of cool, I met her 8th grade going into high school. Her parents had already had the high school counselor meeting. They decided to register her for ROTC. Again, she would never have served in the military, but it sounded like a good idea, provided her structure, she liked it. One day we were in session, and I said to Rachel, I said, oh, how's things going at lunch? And she said, well, I'm having a really hard time with conversation. And I said, oh, well, what's the hard time? Well, every time I ask, let's say his name was Kevin, about the weather, he answers and then there's nothing else. And I said, what high school girl is talking about the weather? And then it dawned on me. She's been in social skills programming. And what do we teach them when it talks about making conversation? To ask about the weather, right? And so because she's black and white thinking, she's rigid, she can't make change, that is what she's been doing at lunch every day since like kindergarten. How's the weather? And then having nothing else to say. And so part of that, and again, in real-time social skills, is teaching her, well, what is Kevin interested in? What kind of clubs and activities does he do? And so helping her to even expand her ability to communicate. And this is where therapy helps, right? And I always tell people, you don't necessarily have to have them thrown in social skills groups. Cognitive behavioral therapy that's done well, from a problem-solving perspective, can absolutely be effective for autistic individuals. And so one of the things about Rachel, and I should point this out for all kiddos though, is that we notice a developmental difference. Social, again, when we talk about autism being a neurodevelopmental condition or difference. And so these children are typically about 3 to 4 years behind their peers when it comes to social and emotional reactions. And I want you to hear that for a minute. So my 10-year-old, when something upsets them, looks more like a, what age? A 6-year-old. My 13-year-old looks more like a 9 and 10-year-old, yeah. My 17-year-old that should be driving, that should be wanting to work a job, or should be wanting to go to college looks more like an 8th grader who's scared to graduate high school, who doesn't want to get a job, who is scared to drive a vehicle because of the anxiety and the responsibility. And so oftentimes when we talk about autistic individuals, we have what we call our chronological age and our developmental age. So chronologically, right, we might have a 16-year-old that's 6'4" in front of you, but responding and acting oftentimes like a 12-year-old. And so that becomes difficult, again, for everyone around them, but knowing that also puts us in a place where I don't respond to him like a 16-year-old. I respond like he's a 12-year-old, and I help him to navigate those moments through great interventions like problem solving. And so thinking about one of the things with puberty, we already have self-esteem, negative thinking, all the things that happen. And we also see this on a rise, again, in autistic individuals where they are overthinking. Does that say, what does that say? That's still saying school. That's still saying school. Oh, I went backwards, didn't I? There we go. What was that saying? That's right. There we go. All right. So in 3 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up with something, a few statistics and why we really need to be talking about our autistic individuals. And so community, and that's all of us here. Some of the challenges that we're seeing when we talk about community supports, and many families will find supportive environments if they're lucky and blessed in their school districts, K through 12. But here's what we're having a challenge with. We're having a challenge with activities for autistic individuals. And even the idea of saying, yeah, it's great that they're in Special Olympics and we have certain programs for children with different abilities, but why can't all programs accept children? All children. right? And so thinking about one of the things I do, I'm a children's pastor at Christ Wesleyan in Greensboro, and I teach trauma-informed care to churches, specifically within the Wesleyan denomination, but teaching even on Sunday morning, because that's one space where we don't have enough trained people even to work with kids, let alone autistic kids who just want to come to church with their family. So our community sports like college. Let me give you a quick couple of statistics. Only 38% of autistic children that actually go to college will graduate. Only 38%. Most of them, 80% of them, will go to a 2-year college instead of a 4-year university. Those that do go to a 4-year university, only about 11% will graduate from a 4-year university. Okay? Job employment. When we look at the unemployment rate of individuals with autism, across the nation, 35 to 85% unemployment rate numbers. We are not the only folks with this issue. The UK and Europe, about 75%, report about 75% unemployment rate for individuals with autism diagnosis. This does become a community concern. What happens with things like employment? It's the same things we saw when they were in kindergarten, middle school, and high school. Difficulty with coming to work on time. Difficulty following instructions and directions that are vague. Difficulty with peer interactions. These are the folks that have a really hard time with small talk. So guess what? It's hard to even get through an interview. They are dealing with no support even in the transition. And I can tell you, in working in this space long enough, there are so many parents and families that are just hoping that their child will graduate. That's what their goal is right now. And they really can't think about future and jobs and things like that, because every day is a struggle, and every day they're just trying to find ways to give their kid a hope of, again, a life that feels what we call quote, unquote, normal. One of my thoughts and one of my hopes is the day that we go from just not awareness, but really understanding. Changing our lens that these kids are bright, they're amazing, they're designed just the way they are for a reason, and that we can be, as we always say, that one caring adult that can make a difference in their life. And so even if we begin to understand that, hey, let me pause for a moment and not keep saying, why are you doing this? But really understand, help me to understand what's difficult for you. Changing even that question. Because when we ask a kid, why are you doing this? What do they say? I don't know. But what's making it difficult is a totally different question. And it helps us to let them know we're listening. It helps them know we're here, we're wanting to help make a change. I feel like my role, whether it's through writing, through my podcast, through being a therapist, even being a children's pastor, is helping individuals to really see that difference. Real quick, I know I said let her go, but this is really the last point, I promise. If you haven't had your question answered, please make sure you stop by and see me. But I'll tell you, I travel once a year to Puerto Rico, Lauderdale, Puerto Rico. And it is not San Juan, it is not the phone, although we do go to a beach. It is not at the top, it is actually at the bottom of Puerto Rico. And it is the spot where Hurricane Maria, years ago, first hit and devastated Puerto Rico. It actually was what caused a lot of families to then leave and migrate back to the States from Puerto Rico. And when we go, there is a little boy named Ian. And Ian has my heart because Ian is nonverbal autistic. And his grandparents came to me, they were pastors that we served with there in Puerto Rico, and they said, the schools will not educate Ian because they do not have the resources or know how to work with a nonverbal child. And when I say Puerto Rico, it is not another country. I'm not going to get political, but it is the United States. And so thinking that there are kids, even here in the United States, that do not have access to services based on the fact that they were born with brain differences, not deficits, but brain differences. We have to do more to increase our awareness and being able to help our young people. Thank you guys so much. Let's love our babies.
Well, y'all, did y'all enjoy that? Look, I'm a real divergent. I can appreciate that last talk. I want y'all to give another round of applause. And that's why you for yourselves. That's for y'all, for being here today, for experiencing this. And we're just so grateful for you all being here. We're about to let you go. I want to bring Dory Goble and Bill Gold. They're going to close us out. And Like I said, we've got something for you, and there's a little bit of time left. If you want to stop by and speak to the vendors, please do that. And please know how important it is that you are here today.
Okay. Who knows who this is?
Hey.
You're all going home with
No, is that not only is he the executive director, he's like a locomotive. He does all of the heavy lifting that makes the youth summit a possibility. And so Jim, one, you've done a wonderful job. I'd also like to present you with the plaque as a small acknowledgement of just how valuable you are to the youth of North Carolina. And it says, in recognition of Jim Alvarado for outstanding contributions in making the 5th Annual Youth Resilience Summit a resounding success. And this is presented to you with gratitude by the Board of Directors of Youth of North Carolina.
That's the end of the program. Make sure you pick up your bear in the corner there. And if you dare, Dory will throw it. Thank you for coming.